be your moon, if you will be my sky, and I promise I will follow you until the end of the line. And I will be your flower, if you will be the bee. And I promise I will always give you the sweetest parts of me. 'Cause you're the tip to my top, the key to my lock, you're my breakfast in the morning, you're my up to my down and the king of my crown, and you're everything I want. You got that sweet, sweet, sweet honey, sugar, and I want it sweet, sweet honey. You got that sweet, sweet honey, sugar, and I want it sweet, sweet, sweet honey. So give it to me.
Oh man, trying to time a song with an intro, goofing around behind the scenes. I miss radio a little bit. It was a fun experience, but I'm delighted that I get to goof around with y'all. How you doing? Good to see you. I'm bummed out. I didn't get to see Domenico cutting some rug. Oh yeah, as much as I can. I'll tell you what, the Roots have a song called The Seed, and I was trying to dance to it last night, and all I can say is the Roots outwiggled me. Oh my God, I got a sore back. Not too much, the moves are too smooth and won't be for some time. I'm bummed out that I didn't get to see the end of the letter hack there. I already started with an arbitrary time, but it felt like it was too far off. So, yeah, there's a reason YouTube has replay. Good to see. Let's say hi. Hey, John Bailey. Hello from San Francisco, California. Enjoying the stream. Love it. My dogs are goth. Good to see you. Domenico, we said hi. Pinkerbell, hello. Wicked Foxy Dragon, Christy Z, it's good to see y'all. Good to see y'all. Rex Trek, hello. Rustbox, hello. Good to see you. Let's rock and roll. We're going to bum you out a little bit, but it's going to depend on how you view it. So when I show you this, let me tell you how I view it. I don't think it's all that sad, but it's important to keep in mind. Hey, who's that? Who's that fella? That's an artist in a trench. Those two things are those are just facts. It's what a Ukrainian soldier is doing in a trench as he defends his home. Just wanted to remind you that these are human beings, and I'd rather that guy go back to doing art because it looks like he's really good at it. But he has decided he needs to be there. Why? Because his home is being invaded. So let's be respectful of his choice and help these brothers in any way we can. I understand we have sometimes differing views about how to get there, but the goal is for that guy to be allowed to go back to his life. And let's hope we can get that done before a mortar deprives us of whatever works he would have created. Mercy me. Don't worry, folks. It's not all maudlin. We actually have a lot of fun stuff to go over. As you know, the show's got a bit of a new format. We do the news, then we do what you can do segments, because not everything is something that it's good to act on. Sometimes it's just good to know about it with the understanding that you're not supposed to do anything right now. Often because action won't help. Action will make things worse. It's not the same, though, as saying we shouldn't keep track of it. So in that spirit, we have our first segment. Let's jump into it. Keeping an eye on a situation that we said we would until such time as we do need to act. There is a town in Alabama that refuses to let its black mayor do his job. You might be wondering, why is it relevant that the mayor is black? Truth be told, it's just an assumption, except that this seems to happen. This seems to happen to black folks a hell of a lot. Things like this. Oh, the rules are going to change. Oh, the rules won't be applied this time. In a way that works out negatively. When it works out negatively, you tend to see that it's happening to black folks. When it works out positively, regardless of race, it tends to happen to wealthy folks. The ignoring of the rules. But let's dive into it. No need to be cagey about it. Here is the specifics of what we're talking about. There it is.
It's often a straightforward process in this country. You hold an election for office, a clear winner is declared, and that person assumes the position once the votes are counted and certified. But New Bern, Alabama is a bit different. They haven't held elections for years, with a position often handed down from father to son for multiple generations, until one man went against the norm, and he says it's led to him being blocked from his mayor.
Oh, painful. Painful. Let's hope that's not a sign of things to come. We're going to try refreshing. Nope. Refresh cache, please. Well, thankfully, this is why we sometimes pause this there. Looks like we had our internet connection utterly break. And you in the live stream will get to enjoy this extra piece of content, which is your old pal Jake being annoyed as the technology doesn't work as well. But we'll keep it visually interesting. So in theory, what we're going to see is an update on.
It's often a straightforward process in this country. You hold an election for office.
Oh, that's rough video quality, huh? Okay. Well, we'll take a whack at it. Anyway, here's the summary of the situation along with where it stands in court. And I just want to tell y'all watching live one more time that because it is in court, we will not help things by acting. The town is too small for us to show up and not appear to be bullies. That said, let's listen to how the law is handling it.
A clear winner is declared, and that person assumes the position once the votes are counted and certified. But New Bern, Alabama is a bit different. They haven't held elections for years, with a position often handed down from father to son for multiple generations, until one man went against the norm. And he says it's led to him being blocked from his mayoral duties for years. Now the battle over who's really in charge is at the center of a federal lawsuit as tensions run high. Our Steve Osinsami has the tale of two mayors.
New Bern, Alabama is one of those small places in America where you'll find nearly a dozen churches to worship the Lord, but not a single grocery store. It's barely a mile long with about 200 people, an old cotton town where the history of slavery still lives deep in the soil. Even the cemeteries are still racially segregated. This is where white people are buried. And over here is the dirt road that takes you to a hill where the descendants of former slaves still bury their dead today.
So look, I understand that there's some sensitivity over whether or not you should specify the race of a person in a given scandal. But race is relevant here, in my opinion, and this is why. And I'm glad that they took the time to lay out a tangible example of how this town is still trying to cling on to the bad old days.
I'm not trying to divide the town, just want to make the town better.
For the first time ever, a child of those black ancestors has become the city's mayor, hoping he can bring people together. But in a lawsuit he's filed in federal court, he says that some of his white neighbors have kept him from the job and locked him out of office. And he's seen here arguing with one of them outside the building, a city clerk who he and his black voters tried to persuade to their side but failed.
What you're doing is unjust.
No, it's not.
It is. It's absolutely unjust. It's unjust by this gentleman and it's unjust by the people of this town.
Do you feel cheated?
Oh, yeah.
Do you feel discriminated against?
Yes.
What is it that you want to see happen?
I want to take my rightful seat, and I want to hold each and every one of them accountable for what they did.
I don't want to distract, but I do want to be able to pay attention, and I won't be able to pay attention myself unless it's addressed. So we're going to address something irrelevant. We're going to get there. All right. Son of a gun. The shoes. Fantastic. Bold choice. Very bold choice, given the pants and the socks. But by God, pulled it off. And it's not easy to do. Okay.
Accountable for what they did.
Boom.
56-year-old Patrick Braxton was born and raised here and became the city's first black mayor in 2020 when he quietly filed the paperwork at this county courthouse to run for the position. Up until that year, no one had ever officially put in for the job.
How many years has this place gone without an election?
Side note. Do you remember when we were talking earlier in September about how there is a lot of places where Republicans aren't used to having to even put any effort into getting elected. They're so gerrymandered, or the elections are so much a part of the cultural assumptions of the place that they forgot how to fight. Jesus God, the current mayor of that town didn't even know he should be on the lookout round about election time for a contender. To be continued. You can see how much work the mayor did, and no matter how much you think it is for keeping their current position, assuming they even wanted it, no matter how much you think it is, it's less than that.
I think they said about 60 something.
So then how was the mayor decided here?
Just hand it down, hand it down.
And let me guess, what was the race of this mayor in this town? What's it always been?
White.
Yeah,
Surprise, surprise.
The mayor at the time was this man, Haywood Stokes III. His father, Haywood Stokes Jr., who died 10 years ago, was the mayor before. And in a response to the federal lawsuit, he and his lawyers admit that the town of New Bern has not held an election for years prior to decide who leads their city. But they deny that there's any racism or a conspiracy here to keep black people out of office. He and Patrick Braxton are both volunteers at the fire station on Main Street. They've known each other for more than a decade. So it was a shock to everyone when the legal deadline had passed to run for the job, and this time a black man, Patrick Braxton, had gone through the trouble of filing the proper paperwork and was the one and only candidate. Months later, he was seen here, being sworn into office by a state judge. And like previous mayors before him, he appointed his own city council, who put their hands on the Bible that same warm evening.
You know, we was very excited. We had one meeting.
You did have a meeting in City Hall?
One, yes.
Oh.
We got a chance to come in, and
Try to get organized.
Tried to organize what,
Things
that was it.
They say it.
Let me pause for a moment. Up until this point, I have no complaints. Up to the point in the story they're talking about, there's nothing wrong with anything that's happened. If there are towns where a dog is made mayor, does the dog make political decisions? No. The town is just small enough that they acknowledge that they don't really need that position filled. But here's sort of the key thing about why those stories are cute. They're also acknowledging that nobody else wants to do the job. That's what was happening here. The position of mayor was just handed down. And yes, it was always from white person to white person. And hell, maybe there was a time in this town's history where some Klansmen were the ones that made sure it went that way. Maybe. I'm literally just trying to find the darkest thing I can think of, the most worrying thing. But the reality is, in the modern era, it was just there needs to be a designated somebody to sign a thing whenever that happens. That's all fine. But the key to making that fine is that if somebody has a notion about how the town ought to be run, and they go through the procedure of signing up, you're supposed to respect that. You're supposed to say, oh, okay, this person wants to be an active mayor. This person wants this position taken seriously. They live here. They have a right to demand that, and they have a right to put themselves forward as the person for the job. And oh, look, other people who had a notion about how their home should be run wanted to get involved, did get involved. It's where it goes after this, where we have problems. And I find it sad and a dishonor to the 21st century that such problems exist.
Felt good in a town where 85% of the residents are black to finally have a city council that looked more like the people they serve.
So you met the former mayor, Woody, after you were sworn in,
Yes.
and there didn't appear to be any problems?
No problem.
And said, here are the keys?
Yeah.
And that's it?
That's it. Walked off.
So now
All
you have
good.
a meeting at City Hall.
Again, I want to stress, up until this point, and excuse me, I was a little premature, up until this point, fine. Old mayor sounds like a fine person up until that point. Did the correct thing. Say, oh, you really want to be a proper mayor? Okay, here you go. I was basically just keeping the seat warm for somebody.
When did the doors get locked?
Well,
I
we
guess
don't
the
know.
next day, we don't know exactly when. I guess they knew we was there.
Can you imagine? It's a city hall. It's the town hall, and it's locked forever. It's been locked for 2 years now. Well, I feel that it's all about race. And I don't mind saying that. That's what it's about, because I've lived here all my life.
According to their lawsuit, they're also locked out of the city's accounts at this bank on the other side of the county. Meanwhile, the black city council members say that the old city council continues to collect taxes, pay the lawn crews, and somehow conduct regular business.
Do you even know who's holding the meetings?
No.
No, and they must be holding it in a private home.
You may hang up or press 1 for more options.
We tried more than once to get the former mayor's side of the story, knocking on his door when it appeared he was home. He didn't answer. In court filings, Woody III explains his position, accusing Mayor Braxton of living outside the city limits, which would disqualify Braxton from being the mayor. And it is true that Mayor Braxton has more than one home, one that he uses as his city residence that he rents, and this one where he lives with his family outside the city. Here's where it gets more complicated.
Before he breaks down how it's more complicated, let's address the simplicity. Whether or not this person has an argument to make, are they doing it in the correct venue? No. The old mayor doesn't just get to decide that things didn't go the way they thought they should go and act as though they went the way they should go in their mind. They don't get to just decide that reality is whatever they want it to be. Didn't even file to participate in the election. And then he decides, we just don't like this new fella. No, you go through the courts. That's the correct way to do it. So any argument he's going to make, irrelevant, because he didn't go through the courts. They just started acting on their own.
Mr. Woody Stokes is arguing that he gets to hold on to the job because of a special election he claims was held in October to vote on the new city council, weeks before the black city council was sworn in, where only the old city council members qualified to run, and because of that, kept their jobs. He says his old city council put him back in charge. But in his lawsuit, Mayor Braxton says that his side didn't even know that a special election was happening, and says that if it did, it was no good, saying that it took place in secret and that no notice of a special election was ever published.
Y'all just need to go on and leave us alone.
But there's not a story here.
We went to the Mercantile Store, a small diner across the street from the town hall, a place that black residents say is ground zero for Mayor Braxton's opposition. We were told to leave the room.
You just need to go on and leave us alone. It's going to be a black and white thing, and y'all know it.
If you're
Oh,
living
close.
and you're working here, someone can make your life living hell. It can really affect you, your family. You will be quiet.
On our walk with the mayor,
So I just really want to stress that these are the tactics of a crybaby. Oh, y'all got to leave us alone. Oh, you don't like being bothered? Well, don't be a problem then. To be crystal clear, there are rules in place that prevent this kind of behavior. And you can't just say, nope, we had a secret Susan's election and turns out the vote of the people don't matter. Turns out we're not going to have democracy. No. you're going to do, if there is a special election, and it is within the rules, then it's also within the rules that the people have to be aware of it. There are not rules that say the city council can just decide that they're still in power and just decide that the last election didn't matter. No, sir. That is not allowed for obvious reasons.
Here, the few white residents we met who support him were only comfortable telling us so off camera.
You see what I've been
Jesus.
trying to tell you?
Yeah. Yeah. That people are afraid.
Yeah.
Of what?
I don't know where they live. They friends? Who gonna stop speaking to them?
One small exception was the kind woman working at the town's new library who didn't really want to take a side.
I think it's very
Jesus.
unfortunate for the town of New Bern to have to go through this conflict. And I'm hoping that people will listen to each other and be graceful with each other and come together as the New Bern community.
Laquina Lewis has become sort of a political activist.
Wait a minute. Now here's where I don't know. Here's something I don't know. And thank God this is the news portion, so we can talk it out a little bit together. I'm going to read your comments after I finish recording this segment, but here it goes. I don't know that being peaceful and graceful with scum is a good idea. I'm not sure I can endorse that notion. That said, it's a librarian saying it. In terms of wise and decent people, it's hard to go against a librarian, especially when it comes to people that know the community, and that's a big part of this. It's not that I don't think we have an obligation to act. I think we do have an obligation to act, but above all else, we have an obligation to act smart. Our obligation is to ensure that the ideology that tells somebody it's okay to just undo an election because you feel like it, that doesn't continue. But we have to be as effective as possible. And if my general rule is to let them cook, so to speak. If somebody is already working on a problem, particularly the person who is closest to the problem, let them cook. Don't get in their way. Don't risk making it harder for them by shoving in our own solution before we even see if their plan works.
Who works with the
But I'm just saying, I'm not ruling out driving down to Alabama and chaining myself to something.
mayor.
Who's everyone afraid of around here?
You tell me. Power, the power structure.
These are
Whose
some of
power?
the frightening letters filled
Oh,
with
Christ.
racial slurs that she says she's gotten in the mail.
This is why I just can't say it's not race. I received a lot of hate mail that referenced lynchings and name calling, referenced my children. So this is personal for me, and this is serious. This isn't a game. And obviously, people want it to go away.
He said, you guys are just going to make it about race. What do you say to that?
Look at the deck of cards. It's not necessarily about race, but we have to admit and be honest that race does play a small factor in this.
I feel so guilty. Really, I do. Because we have allowed this to happen to us for years and years. We allowed it to happen. I've never known a black man, even if it was a white man, being elected mayor here in New Bern. I've never known that. And we should have said something, done something, see could we get some help from somewhere, but we didn't.
Why?
And that's what I asked myself, why?
The mayor, who according to a state court is still this man, wants the state or federal court to come to town and make things right. But if they don't, he says he's
To be continued. That was about to get real interesting. Hello. I super appreciate the letter hack raid. Delighted to see y'all joining us. I gotta tell you, I was heartbroken. I had to dip out at the end of the Kowalski conversation, but it was a good one. We're talking about some tragedy. A black man was elected mayor in Alabama and has been prevented physically from doing his job. Let's find out what he's doing.
He's not going away, and that there will be a real election when his term is up. He has big hopes to finally bring in a grocery store. It's high time, he says, for black folks in small towns like his to start claiming a little more agency over their own lives.
It has to disappoint you that it's along racial lines.
Yes.
Me too. I'm sorry I cut it off at the end there. Hey, let's have a quick look, though, at the Alabama Open Meetings Act. The new Open Meetings Act, says the Alabama government, the new Open Meetings Act, which replaces the old Sunshine Law, provides you with greater access to your state and local government. This law guarantees that Alabama's citizens have open access to agencies, boards, commissions, and other governmental bodies which conduct the people's business. Please use this web application to review the notices that have been posted by governmental bodies, as well as to sign up for direct notification of meetings at your personal email address. Fun fact. I am going to be pouring through that just to get a little glimpse at where the court case is going. Now, what can you do about it? Well, this is the news section of the show. We are just looking at this as a news item because, as stated at the end there, this is in court. The mayor has asked that the law intervene, as it should. We should ensure that if this was a criminal act by the old mayor and the old city council, that criminal charges are filed. That's what it's going to come down to. Now, right now, we are dealing with the portion of the law that, for lack of the proper legal term, starts by making things right. Starts by putting things the way they ought to be right now. But following that, we need to look at this as a criminal matter. It must be. So we're going to keep watching, and we are not going to let this go. Let's see what the wicked community has to say. Too much to type. Hope everyone's having a chill night. Absolutely. Rex Trek with the very much appreciated why I oughta. Mars Falcon, the Confederacy never quit. Well, they don't tap out, then we don't let up on the pressure points. Melanie Dennis, we really need to do co-ops from housing to jobs. If you have extra land, this would be helpful and beneficial to not only you, but other people as well. Just think you can grow your own food or... Yeah. Exactly. My dogs are goth. Now it's gotten national and international attention. Maybe that will help. I'm truly hoping so. This is one of those things which we cannot ignore, but I'm hoping it's also one of those problems which just gets solved without the need for our intervention, because we're doing a hell of a lot. But, and let me also say this. It will also be, what do you call those depth gauges? Like the string you drop into the water. Different thing. It'll be a litmus test for how well the U.S. government is functioning these days. If this is resolved sufficiently without our intervention, good. That's a good thing. And that tells us a bit about how healthy the government, or our intervention, first of addressing why the government didn't act on its own. We'll get there. Boy, I am seeing very worrying numbers on the stream health. I hope you continue to be able to... Plumline, thank you, Pinkerbell. Gulf Coast Grit, Plum Bob. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Well, hopefully you can still hear me. I'm gonna just charge ahead as though you can. Because this is probably my favorite what you can do of that we're going to do all week. Okay, there we go. We're back. And I have to recall the wow internet person. All right. Then, while this is not buffering, let's jump right into the segment. Yeah, the basic concept here is that Republican politicians are not liked, and they know it. If they want a picture of themselves hanging out with a fun group of people, they have to fake it. Why? Because any group of people that wants to hang out with a Republican politician is not a fun group of people. What happens when they fake it and they get caught? Uh-oh, here it is.
Absolutely appalled. That's what some women are saying about how a candidate for Franklin mayor appears to have lifted their social media post to claim them as her supporters.
Gabrielle Hansen may not have thought anyone would track down the women whose photos she posted on social media.
But that is exactly what News Channel 5 chief investigative reporter.
I'm sorry, I have to issue a correction to News Channel 5. She definitely didn't think she would get caught. Okay.
Phil Williams did, and Phil discovered Hansen now has some explaining to do.
Welcome to the Gabrielle Hansen for Mayor of the City of Franklin campaign.
Gabrielle Hansen is a Franklin alderman and a candidate for Franklin mayor, a person who relishes her MAGA credentials, even posting a pic of herself at Mar-a-Lago. But if you believe her social media, she's also getting support from a diverse group of people. Here celebrating a vibrant and engaged community at a This Is Your Town meet and greet, and here expressing heartfelt appreciation to an executive women's club for their invaluable support and encouragement. Both bear the hashtags Franklin, Tennessee and Vote Hansen.
What do you make of this?
I honestly don't know it.
This weekend, we tracked down several of the women in that image. The photo, it turns out, was taken 7 years ago in Chicago.
I'm right in the front with a little top knot bun and a little American flag sweater.
Do you support?
And still crushing that style. Look at those glasses.
Hansen?
I do
And that
not.
shirt.
I actually do not know who that is.
This woman, her first name is April, asked us not to use her last name, but she was shocked by what we discovered. A second woman described the reaction from several of the women in the group as appalled. She added, "It's not true. It didn't happen. And everybody in that photo knows it."
So as far as you know, you have never even met Gabrielle Hansen.
No, and I have a pretty good memory. I keep a tight circle of friends and colleagues, and I think I would have remembered someone like that.
Leading looks like.
I think it looks like.
Instead of being an executive women's club, as Gabrielle Hansen claimed, the women in the pic had all been selected for an ad campaign for the women's clothing brand, The Limited.
That was a sort of brunch that we all came together just to celebrate each other and to celebrate the campaign.
Looking back through old photos, some of the women concluded that Hansen may have been part of the ad campaign, but they insist she wasn't at the brunch, and they never authorized her to use their images to boost her campaign.
I'm wondering how this person doesn't have photos of other friends or actual supporters. Like, it's a really far stretch to dig up a photo from social media from 7 years ago of just really was just a really delightful brunch of a group of women who had just met.
After some on social media noticed the pic seemed to have been taken at a restaurant in Chicago, Hansen posted an update on Facebook claiming, "These are all my friends that have relocated to Nashville, Brentwood, and Franklin, and they all support me."
In case you were wondering if she just directly lied, she surely did. Good Lord. So why? Why lie about that stuff? I have a theory. She does not have a, let's call them diverse, crowd of supporters. and understands that it's embarrassing not to be able to demonstrate that when you have support for the community, it's not all from one specific group. I have a sneaking suspicion she's self-conscious about that. Maybe nobody would have even noticed or brought it up, but she knew, and hence she felt the need to lie about it.
Again, the women say that's a lie.
I know some of those women are not located in the places that she named. Some of those women are still in Chicago and other parts of the country, but not Tennessee.
She's clad in an Elmo-themed drag outfit.
This year, Henson tried to block a Pride Fest from being held at a Franklin Park. She tried to pressure sponsors to drop funding for a Juneteenth celebration in Franklin, and she opposed erecting historical markers to mark spots where lynchings had occurred.
Do you have anything in common with her as far as you know?
I do not. I do racial equity and work that supports all people.
Yeah, I can't not make this joke. Look, that wasn't entirely true what they reported about the spots where lynchings occurred. She just wanted to change what the markers said. She didn't like that the lynchings were framed as a bad thing. I'm lying.
And all the beautiful
But it's kind of true, though. You got it. All right.
expressions that people show up in life. And so I certainly do not want to be associated with anything like that.
And that image from the so-called meet and greet, it turns out it too was apparently lifted from the web. Instead of being taken in Franklin, it was also from Chicago. Henson has now deleted it from her social media.
Any message you would have for her?
I would encourage her to go make genuine friends so she can take photos with those folks if she's looking for supporters. There's no need to comb pictures on the internet to make up a story. None of us need that.
Just as the story was posted online today, Gabrielle Hansen finally called me back. In one of the more bizarre conversations I've ever had, she and her campaign manager argued that federal law somehow lets them post whatever they want on social media, and that what I was doing amounted to, quote, stalking. So we've posted the video online, figuring people deserve to see it for themselves.
And again, the women with whom you spoke are emphatic. If they lived here in Cabo, they would not support her.
Yeah, that's right. And in the words of one, not if she were the last candidate on earth.
That's
Good eggs. Good eggs in that town. And in that picture, I guess I should say. Not if she were the last candidate on earth. Oh. Yeah. So what can you do about it? Well, folks, this one's a fun one. You can reverse image search. I promise you, the local Republicans running in your area are also liars. They are. You have to be if you are a Republican politician. Now, if you are a Republican voter, you're somebody that doesn't apparently mind getting lied to, but the politicians that run as Republicans need to be liars. After all, they are trying to dismantle democracy. And in order to do that, they're trying to get elected. So they have to lie just on their face. They have to lie about whether or not they think the United States should be a democracy. Of course, they think it should be when it could give power to them. But once they have power, it shouldn't be a democracy anymore in their eyes. What do? You reverse image search. I've linked a guide in the comments for how to reverse image search. When a Republican politician in your area posts a picture and they say the people in the picture are their friends or are their supporters, but you don't see the politician in that picture, reverse image search that picture. Most of the time, no, you won't find anything. Comes from a thing that they were indeed at and blah, 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 blah. But once in a while, you're going to catch them doing this. AstroTurfing their own popularity. And when you catch them doing that, let the local news know. to my shame, I didn't credit the person that sent this to me, and I can't remember if this video came from Wireless Mike in the conversation we've been having, or Anti-Corporatist in the conversation we've been having. But thank you, because I laughed uproariously at this at this particular one. Particularly the sass at the end. I do love it when a news person is able to lay down the law because they did their homework. We contacted them, they didn't want to talk. But they did whine and say we were bullying them. Delightful. Reverse image search these punks. Let's embarrass them all through the year. And next, let's check out what the Wicked community has to say. Wireless Mike, the Franklin Ethics Commission unanimously dismissed all ethics complaints against the Alderman Gabriel Hansen, the Nashville Tennessean. Yeah, that's... Oh, let me jump back. My dogs are goth pointed at Wireless Mike. It was me. Yes, indeed. Thank you. And that was fucking hilarious, man. I think you pointed out in the email too, like, give it to the end, trust me. And you were right. It was quite good. It's a shame that the ethics complaints, like that's what Tennessee thinks its ethics should be. They don't find anything wrong with that. I would say to the, let me go back. I would say to the Franklin Ethics Commission, raise the bar, raise your standards. You should have more pride than that. That being said, it's fine. What's most important is to get traction in the media and in the conversation around town to make it crystal clear that these folks were lying. They've just advertised for us why they shouldn't be elected. Look at her. She's running and she's already lying to you. She's already trying to deceive you. Can you imagine what will happen if you give her power? What are you saying about yourself if you reward her for that lie, for disrespecting you? Do you have pride? Those are the questions you should be asking voters in the area, and those are the questions you will have the opportunity to ask when inevitably some lying ass Republican politicians try this again. They do it all the time. Bill Huizenga in my area back in the day was a big fan of pretending like he had a diverse coalition supporting him. And when you asked what he meant by diverse, it would be like, Catholics, Protestants, super Catholics, Baptists. Like, all right. That's what, as long as we're clear about what you mean. Wild. Gulf Coast Grit, by the way, love the handle. No need to imagine. They just straight up tell you what they will do with power. Yes, indeed. There is no quiet part. Yup. But we should say it again for the folks in back every time we can. Mars Falcon. Ethics get in the way of their obvious, blatant, in-your-face agendas, though. Yeah. Melanie Dennis. Have they called the DOJ in yet? No, and I don't think they should. I don't think this one's a matter for the DOJ. Certainly for their party. If this was a Democrat that was doing this kind of stuff, I would probably ask the local party to ask them to leave, simply because I wouldn't want the reputation of the party dragged down. But even as I say that, I'm thinking, well, at the same time, I'm not sure how long the Democrats are going to stay one party. But I think that's the sort of way it should be handled. At the very least, it shouldn't get to a point where you're having to take down posts because people are willing to take 5 minutes to look into them. Like if you're there, you got to question, why is that person allowed to run under this particular banner? What does that say about the banner? Donald James, crazy elects crazy. Oof, Tao and Jack. Apparently, the praying coach was also fake, too. Yeah. Melanie Dennis, the evangelical Christian American Taliban. Oh, yeah. Al-Qaeda is a real problem. Shade Dragon. Most of the Democrats honestly belong on the right. That is true. I think the refugees of the Republican Party are going to mix with the refugees of the Democrats after either we kick them out or we leave in mass that party and form our own. But I think they're going to get along. They miss getting along like two peas in a pod. And what we are suffering from right now is a far-right takeover of the system wherever they can grab it. And we're finding they don't have a very strong grip. We can say, okay, get your grubby mitts off that. But it's sort of just revealed the way things really operate. Got one more for you that I want to toss your way. And I'm terrified. I'm terrified to do it because it's a long goddamn video. It's a fun video, but it's a long one. Oh, wait, but it's loading fine. Okay. So I'm not sure that we're going to watch this whole thing. We might, but I'll have to edit it way down. We might just watch enough of it that I can get to the point already. And then if you want, we can finish watching it together. But don't let the length freak you out. Here is not it yet because I'm not recording, but it's about to be. There's a channel called Horses. Not something I would have thought I'd be clicking on, unless I do like watching people at competitions. I like dressage, but it doesn't cover horses. Turns out, to my knowledge, it covers life and culture and politics, and in that deep way. I saw a breakdown of what is communism, what is fascism, what is yada, yada, yada. Beautiful video essays. I definitely recommend the channel. Again, that is Horses. And here they are pointing out what causes just about all of our problems these days. The answer will not surprise you in the slightest. According to Horses, I should say.
Stoked chaos to sell ads. Social media sucks our blood for data brokers. The planet burns because of corporate interests, etc., etc. Talking about problems feels like an act of redundancy. Painful, maddening redundancy. Because these problems keep leading right back to the same place, over and over. Once you've followed these roads enough times, that destination becomes grotesquely familiar. It's like you've been there before. You've arrived at the same conclusion before. It's a bizarre feeling. You stand there certain you've been following a new road, a road you've never seen before, and yet there you are.
This reminds me, Shade Dragon. Following this, if you're sticking around, I would like to talk to you about not burning out, because I think what he's talking about right now is very much related. But because it's a long one, I'm not going to interrupt it much more.
Same pit of mud you were last time, and the same one you realize you will be in next time. We as Americans call this place our home. This place powers our civilization, but so many of the issues that plague us in our day-to-day lives insist on bringing us back to to this place. This place, of course, is capitalism. And yet to imagine another system is almost impossible. Capitalism is part of our identity, not just in America, but increasingly around the world. And whenever capitalism presents us with problems, as it often does, we just throw more capitalism at them. Why is this? Why are we so stuck in this system that it seems absolutely impossible to even conceive of an alternative? Well, there is an answer to that, a pretty definitive one, in fact. And we will get to it. But before that, it's important to dispel some of the myths about capitalism as we know it today. There is this idea that capitalism somehow evolved from some natural human tendency, that humans are instinctually driven towards the profit motive, and capitalism is just a name for something that has always existed in one way or another for a very long time. It always has been, and it always will be. Knowingly or not, most people are citing the early capitalist Adam Smith when they make this argument. In the 1800s, Smith saw people trading goods for profit and thought this was just human nature. He said people trade things for other things, and then someone comes up with money and we naturally get to capitalism, whether we try to or not. But Smith just made this up. It never happened. There is no historical or anthropological record that indicates the concept of money emerged from barter. In reality, Smith was already living in a capitalist system. He was just observing the things going on around him. In truth, throughout almost all of human history, resources were exchanged in gift-giving systems based on personal favors. You gave me some fish one time, so here's some milk. This idea that capitalism existed before it was named is simply untrue. People like Adam Smith still say capitalism is natural, that it caters to our human nature in a unique way. This is true. It's also a very bizarre, kind of disgusting way to justify a capitalist system. Greed is certainly within our nature. A desire for intense personal success, even if at the expense of other people, that could be in someone's nature. Capitalism rewards these things, but I don't think anyone would say these are good things. Qualities are not good just because they could be considered natural. Our economic system should not be set up to maximize the darkest parts of human nature. Do we really want the greediest people at the very top of our society? In what world?
Part of why I like this guy right here. The ability to go back and ask simple questions about complex problems. Is this in our nature? That's a simple question. If it is in our nature, should we be encouraging it? Another simple question. I personally have answers for this, but it's irrelevant to the larger conversation that I have rather beliefs about this, which are subject to change as new information comes in, is how I should phrase that. But as I was saying, it's irrelevant. I just really wanted to pause for a moment and appreciate the kinds of things this guy addresses, and why I think his content is stuff we should all be checking out.
Does this sound like a good plan? Still, you will often hear people say that capitalism works. It may not be perfect, but it works. People have jobs mostly and can go about their daily lives. We have iPhones and computers and cars. Well, the people saying that are usually people like me, people who have good jobs, were born into decent circumstances, and came into this world with a not insignificant set of advantages. For those people, yes, capitalism works. I think if you asked people who work 50 hours a week and still live in project housing, they would not be so positive. 8 million people die every year because they can't access health care. Over 1 million die because they can't afford good drinking water. There have been millions of deaths in wars fought over material resources. European colonizers killed 50 million native people in the Americas. The British Empire killed 165 million Indians in the name of capitalism. 42 million people in the world's richest economy live in poverty every single day. We have dot-com bubbles, bank bailouts, auto bailouts, stimulus checks. The American capitalist economy is so unstable that every few years it threatens to collapse and can only be fixed by huge amounts of government spending. Does this sound like something that really works? I mean, if capitalism itself was a business, it would have been shut down long ago. Imagine a world where Coca-Cola products kill millions of people every year and require billions of dollars in regular cash injections just to stay afloat. Capitalism cannot even pass the test of its own existence.
So then the question becomes, what do you do instead of capitalism? And if you guys want, we'll check out the remainder of that video, certainly. But, I would like to then ask this question. What is the system that bails out capitalism? Because that's what we should be putting our energy into working with. That's what we should all demand a right to. And it's socialism, pretty much. Socialism bails out capitalism. Putting it frankly, when the biggest representations, the biggest entities of capitalism run into problems, what happens? Because our lives are built around capitalism. Everything we do costs $1. You want to exist and you don't want to bake to death? Better pay for air conditioning. Better pay for the electricity. You want to talk to your mother? You better pay for internet or a cell phone. You want to apply for a job? So on and so forth. Do you want to participate in this world? Do you want to go out to the movies? $8, popcorn, $1 billion, I assume. I haven't been to the physical movies in a long time. We rely on capitalism because we have been given no choice. And so when we are in danger, capitalism needs to be bailed out. And the thing that bails it out is socialism. Enough people are dependent upon these capitalist entities that they cannot be allowed to fail. And so our tax dollars are then distributed in such a way as to keep those entities going. And the problem is that those entities keep deciding to operate in such a way as to keep a very small number of people who are part of how they function wealthy and the rest poor. They're each like a little mini kingdom with a very rich king and very poor paupers, peasants, the serfs. And this country ends up being made of capitalist serfs. That's myself. That's you. Closest, the closest we are Robin Hoodin, woodsmen and ladies hanging out on our lonesome. But let's have no illusions here. The kingdom of Comcast and Disney and all these other gigantic places, they have a bigger footprint than we do. Here's what you can do about it. I'm not saying that we get rid of the concept of money. That's not even at all where I'm going with this. I'm just saying that as we transition, because we will transition, we have no choice but to transition. As we transition to manners of arranging things that are more equitable for all, so we cut out the needless death and suffering that is built into our current system, pay attention to who you're playing the game with. Right now, and probably for the majority of our lifetimes, we have no choice but to the remaining majority of our lifetimes, if not all of it, let's say that. We have no choice but to play the capitalist game, but you can choose how strictly you follow the rules. Imagine you're giving a loan to your kids. How strictly will you enforce that loan? Probably not very strictly. That's sort of the reason a parent does a loan as opposed to a bank when that happens. Let's say You're operating with, I don't know, a betting pool with your buddy. And your buddy loses and they can't pay up. What do? Do you break their legs? No. You say, and you move on with life. And maybe one day they surprise you and say, you remember last year when we bet on the whatever? Here's the $50. With companies, be ruthless. It comes down to this. Follow the rules of the game ruthlessly when you're working with folks who are doing great at it. If it's a billionaire that you're talking about, require that the rules are ruthlessly enforced with them to the letter. But if you're hanging out around folks that are doing badly under capitalism, if somebody's covered in dirt and they have their hand out, give them $1 without requiring anything else from them. If the boss man asks you to give your labor for free, if they say, can you come in and help us clean up the shop? It's not your normal job, I know, but this place just really needs it. I'm thinking I'll make hot dogs. Hint, hint, there's no overtime. No is the answer. Because the game of capitalism requires that your time be compensated with money. Always. Just pick and choose who you're going to play this game with. And remember that if they are doing better than you, then you play the game ruthlessly. And if they are not doing better than you, then you play the game as gently as you possibly can, if you play it at all. Got more to talk about. So first up, First up, do you want to watch the rest of that video? Because I'll tell you, it starts good and it gets better, in my opinion. I'd like to watch it, but I want to know what you guys would like to do. Thing number 2. Should we attempt a call-in show? I want to talk to Shade Dragon, and so I'm going to leave this up to just Shade Dragon. Shade Dragon, if you're here, do you want to do a relatively quick call-in show following this stream? Or would you like to just utilize the chat? You've already had an evening. Let me know in the comments how you want to talk about conserving energy. And I'd like to have a back and forth because what you touched on is something I've talked about before, and it's something I think we're going to need to be increasingly conscious of starting now and throughout the next year, up until the next summer, frankly. Because what we need to be doing is slowly getting ourselves ready for that summer. And the manner in which we get ready is going to be incredibly important. Energy is going to be a finite resource. The Emo Dragon, I don't know what the video is, but sure. My dogs are goth. They're eating stale croissant at the moment, I'm assuming. It's the pups. Richard Hinckley, let's watch it, Jake. All right. Yeah, let's do it. So here's I'm just going to transition us right over there. Here's the remainder of the video, and I'll chime in with you. God damn it, graphics department. What are you doing? All right.
This is all to say, if capitalism works, it sure is costly to make it do so. Still, people like to say that capitalism has lifted millions out of poverty, so it's the best option. The implication here is that capitalism is working well for the poorest people in the world. But I think if you asked the poorest people in the world, they would not say in general that things are working well.
Jesus.
But they are really nice graphs that show us how capitalism has reduced poverty. Specifically, this entire narrative comes from one place. This graph that shows the percent of people living in poverty over time. People will point to this graph and say, look, things are getting better. Capitalism is great. Let's keep on doing it. But this graph basically sucks for 3 reasons. Bad history, bad economics, and misleading data. In 2023, a group of researchers examined this graph and the capitalism eliminates poverty narrative. They studied 5 major regions of the world and looked at human welfare signals in these places over time. The results of their study were pretty clear. Quote, in all regions studied, incorporation into the capitalist world system was associated with a decline in wages to below subsistence, a deterioration in human stature, and an upturn in premature mortality. In parts of Asia, Africa, and Latin America, key welfare metrics have still not recovered. Let's talk about why that is. This graph starts with the idea that 90% of the world's population lived in poverty before the year 1800. The graph's foundational idea is that virtually all of humanity for all of history was starving and destitute until the 1900s.
So when they say poverty, understand that they are talking about measuring money. How many blue shells did these people have before we invented this system that means blue shells are necessary to exchange for your goddamn life? Oh, they didn't have a lot back then. Well, we're really raising people up, huh?
When capitalism saved us all. This contradicts about a century of academia on capitalism and human welfare. It's just not true. Historically, laborers and working people have been able to feed themselves and their families pretty easily without capitalism. In fact, based on the major indicators of welfare, extreme poverty has historically been really rare in Europe, Latin America, Sub-Saharan Africa, South Asia, and China. Notably, the exceptions to this have been during periods of famines, wars, and systematic dispossession of land, most often caused by capitalism. Secondly, the pro-capitalist argument and the graph also hinge on the idea that more wealth in a country means a better quality of life. But this isn't true. You see, the graph is based entirely on income. However, personal income has not always determined your quality of life. The graph ignores subsistence farming, foraging, access to common food supplies, and other things that were historically really important parts of life.
Imagine you make $50,000 a year in a very rural place, and then imagine you make $50,000 a year and you live in Los Angeles. Very different standard of living as the prices of houses, etc., etc.
This isn't just a what-if scenario. From 1870 to 1921, as British people were colonizing India, the Indian GDP per capita increased by 27%. So surely all of these people would have been pulled from their wretched lives of starvation, right? Not quite. During that time, British policies induced famines killing tens of millions of people. The average Indian life expectancy collapsed by 20%. GDP was soaring, but this was the most disastrous period of history, maybe in Indian history. This nice little graph just kind of sweeps all that under the rug. Another issue is that this graph uses the global poverty line of $1.90. When it was calculated, this number was based on an average of the 15 poorest countries in the world. So it's kind of meaningless to other countries. The 190 number is universally accepted to be far too low. This level of income is still associated with extreme calorie and nutrient deficits and an inability.
Shade Dragon, if you make $50K a year here, you won't make rent. Yeah, case in point. Thank you.
Ability to access basic goods. I mean, just think about it. Could you live on $1.90 per day? Only in the absolute poorest countries is this possible. And we all know poor people exist in every country. To correct for this, economic historians have developed an...
Hey gang, no. We can't just jump past that. Come on now.
Every country.
Where do you see the percentage of people below the poverty line being the worst. What kind of leadership is producing in let's use this example country, right, Chong? What kind of leadership do they have where the people are the poorest? Mm-hmm. Yeah. As long as we're clear.
To correct for this, economic historian
Even under the system of measuring things that Republican politicians, let's call it what it is, conservative politicians like the most, they are doing the least good because they are not good at doing what politicians are supposed to do, which is make your lives better. They have no interest in that. The people, F it, I'm on a roll. The people
exist in every
who run things in the areas where their constituents are doing the least well, those folks are not running things with you in mind. They are running things with themselves in mind. And everywhere that you see there, I want you to know things are working exactly as intended.
To correct for this, economic historians have developed an alternative approach. They use price data to calculate a basic needs poverty line. At this poverty line, people can consume an adequate diet, all from the cheapest available foods. The poverty line also accounts for non-food items like clothing and housing. So when we use the 190 figure, China reduced poverty from 66% in 1990 to 19% in 2005 through capitalist reforms. This looks pretty good. However, if we measure incomes against the more comprehensive BNPL, Chinese poverty increased during the same time, from 0.2% to 24%, with a peak of 68% in 1995. Uh-oh. Most strikingly, the BNPL reflects surging prices of food as China dismantled its socialist food provisioning system. Lastly, this graph conveniently begins in the year 1820. But capitalism has existed since the 1500s. During the missing 300 years, capitalist growth depended on horrific processes, including the en masse enslavement of Africans and the colonial genocide of Indians and Native Americans. These processes caused much of the global poverty that capitalism, quote, solved. Indeed, if we use this graph's method for calculating poverty, during these first 300 years of capitalist growth, global poverty went way, way up. By using an arbitrary
Styx Dragon, thank you for the kind words. I appreciate it, and I'm glad you feel the same. I did just want to toss in ever so quickly. Mars Falcon, the top 1% of Americans controlled about 41.52 trillion in the first quarter. Bottom 50% only controlled about 2.62 trillion collectively. Roughly 16 times less than those in the top 1%, according to the Federal Reserve. Good God Almighty. Bob Treesh, what's wrong with the Mississippi River? A lot of poor people along the river. Very interesting answer from Wireless Mike. Flood-prone areas. Those are left to the poor. Christy Z, I know child poverty doubled here since the child tax credit ended. It took a year. We simply, as a society, made a decision to allow that to happen. We knew that's what would happen. We knew that's what would happen because it got cut in half when we started doing the child tax credit. But then we said, no, we're going to let it go back. Why? Why did we do that? It's the same reason the areas with the poorest people are run by conservatives. It's because those people who are running those areas are not interested in you having paved roads. Or rather, they're not interested in you having the best roads. They're interested in their friend who will give them a kickback getting the contract to make those roads. Same with the schools, same with the water, same with the electricity, same with who takes care of the lawns. Same with it all. They want the people they know to benefit, and especially and frankly only if they themselves personally benefit. Don't trust them. Don't give them an opportunity to steal from us because they've demonstrated who they are. They're thieves, all of them. That's conservative politicians in the United States. And from what I've seen, Canada too. If I have a peek at France, what am I going to find? Same Z's, I suspect. Let me know if you're from another country. Is that more or less how it's going there? The conservative politicians are just trying to thieve from you? Because that's basically the impression that I'm getting. Let me put it like this. Things have not been fair on earth. It's not conservatism as an ideology that I have a problem with. I just think things have not been fair on earth yet. So if you want things to be slow to change, if that's your nature, and you're a politician who actually understands the nuts and bolts of this, then you're not interested in fairness, equity.
Cutoff date, this graph makes itself look a whole lot better than it really is. And let's not forget, the graph says that thanks to capitalism, people earn more money in a day, and that's good. But capitalism is basically the only reason we would need to earn that money. Say someone puts a gun to your head and makes you eat a bunch of salt until you get really thirsty. Then they give you a glass of water. You're really going to thank that person for quenching your thirst? I don't think so.
Boom.
Still, none of these so-called arguments really explain why we are addicted to capitalism. They are reasons people use to justify this addiction, but none of them are the true reason that America is so content in the arms of this system. The truth, unfortunately, is a lot more brutal.
Oh, let me have it.
There exists a phenomenon
Break my
called
heart.
capitalist realism. This idea says that we have gotten to a place within capitalism that we cannot possibly fathom any other system of economics. In capitalist realism, we have all accepted capitalism as the end point for economic development. It's easier to imagine the end of the world than the end of capitalism. This is capitalist realism. But this delusion exists for a good reason. Capitalism has created a Truman Show for all of us. We live, breathe, and sleep money. It motivates everything we do. It's suffocating. Our lives have become capitalist enterprises. See, life is no longer a sequence of time, but a disparate series of jobs and hobbies that need to assemble in some way that is profitable. Of course, we can't see past capitalism when we engage in it with every waking moment. Very few people would defend capitalism in its entirety. Instead, what we all hear again and again is that capitalism isn't perfect, but every other system is worse. This is a trick. With millions dying, our environment collapsing, and an insurmountably large wealth gap, even capitalists themselves cannot realistically defend capitalism as a wholly wonderful system. So instead they pivot, they categorize all other systems as horrible. The dialogue becomes, we may not live in a great system, but you should be glad we don't live in a terrible system. This does not make sense in theory, nor does it make sense in reality. 8 million people die from lack of healthcare each year, but at least we don't massacre citizens like Stalin did. We carpet bomb the Middle East for oil, but at least we don't kill people like Mao Zedong.
All right, this is important enough that it's worth going bit by bit. Let's take that first example, healthcare. All right, let's pause before we get there, because I want to jump into this, or rather, I don't want to jump into this. I want to ease into it. I think Robert Downey Jr. deserves to be rich. I think Michael Jai White deserves to be rich. You ever watch the documentary about the movie Blood and Bone? It's not deep or anything. It just shows you how an action movie star makes an action movie. It's fun. I think Jackie Chan deserves to be rich. Money is just a token for work. That's it. It's a way for somebody whose job it is to grow potatoes can just focus on growing potatoes and grow the best potatoes they possibly can and get them to as many people as they possibly can. And when it comes time to drywall their house, they don't need to learn how to drywall if they don't want. They can sell extra potatoes and get money which can be used at any time to pay for a drywaller to come in and do the work. I think you should be able to hoard money. I think you should be able to be compensated to the point where you don't live the same lifestyle as other folks. You get to live a fancier, cooler lifestyle. I think that should absolutely still be allowed. So why am I sitting here whining about capitalism? Because that ain't got nothing to do with it. I'm not advocating when I say that socialism is the future. First of all, I'm not even really advocating for anything. That's a matter of fact. It's coming, folks. The unnecessarily competitive manner in which we do things simply won't work anymore. It's breaking down now. So what am I advocating for? I'm advocating that we direct this thing. I'm advocating that we understand that we have a blindfold on and we're in a maze with the walls covered in glass shards. We might want to figure out the pattern here and stop cutting up our hands. Or at least try to take the blindfold off if we can. What things should capitalism not touch? What things shouldn't be competitive? In other words, what do we all agree we need so there's no reason for us to compete with each other for better versions of it? There's the question. Luxury? Nope. Not luxury. We don't all need luxury. How about healthcare? Yes. Healthcare we know we all need. And so, why are we competing with each other for it? That's sick. Pun intended, but not as funny as I was hoping it would be. It's sick. What about the military? I think we all agree that we need a military. He was talking about some horrible invasion. 1 second.
American citizens die homeless on the streets.
Okay, well, we're not there yet. Anyway, the military. Yes, we mostly agree that we need a military. The degree to which we need one and the amount of military power that we need, that's a matter of debate. But a base level? No. We agree we need that. So it doesn't really make sense that we're paying Raytheon billions and billions of dollars. And then Raytheon is allowed to take a portion of that and buy campaign ads for people that say we need to go destroy more this or that or the other thing. In addition, housing. We do all agree that we need housing. Do we all need mansions? No, that's a luxury. Should we still have luxuries? Yeah, we have the space. We have the desire to see pretty, gigantic houses. Yeah, we should have luxury mansions. But we need to understand that there is a difference between that and a luxury mansion and just a home. Everybody should have access to a home. So a base level of housing needs to be free, or at the very least taken care of by the government. Why? Because, again, we all agree that we need that. That is literally on the hierarchy of needs. Shelter. It's just under food. Speaking of food, free. Fancy food? Nope, that's a luxury. But bellies full? Yes. Old man loses his job, gets swindled out of all of his money. Is the end of that story and then he's starved to death? I would hope not. Unless he lives in the United States of America. That is my rule of thumb. That's my general rule that I recommend we all take up. It seems like a complicated issue until you can follow some basic guidelines. And if there is a thing that we agree we all need in order to survive. A version of it must be provided for us. And if the free market cannot exist after the free version is provided for us all, well, then we found one of the culprits of the woes of modern society. If a drug company can't exist because the government is producing a drug that it makes, well, then it's not doing something that makes it worthy of existing all on its own. It doesn't provide anything for us that we don't have a right to. Because somebody, and I'll admit I might be wrong here, but I got a notion put in my head real early in life that everybody who exists has a right to their life, their liberty, and their pursuit of happiness.
But at least we don't have those big, ugly Soviet apartments. Even if capitalism is terrible, imagine how much worse everything else must be. They say all we have to do is lower our standards and we will be saved from tyranny and suffering. This ends the conversation, the exploration of new options, before it even has a chance to start. So we are all convinced that capitalism is the absolute. When we begin to see holes in the fabric of capitalism, well, the system has a solution for that too. Anti-corporate sentiment is one of the things that capitalism is best at selling. Billionaires finance movies about how evil billionaires are.
Hey, we are bullshit.
We sympathize with these movies or books or t-shirts or TV shows. We live through them. These things perform our anti-capitalist duties for us, so we can continue to consume without guilt. Meanwhile, those capitalists who produce them get to placate any anti-capitalist sentiment, all while fueling their own system with each Wall-E or Succession or whatever. We are incentivized to place hatred of capitalism in a nice little box and put it away. Imagine a middle manager, a cool middle manager, if you will, one who lambasts the bureaucratic procedural nature of his work. He disavows it as stupid and needlessly complicated. His inward behavior is sensibly defiant, but capitalism means his outward actions cannot match this behavior.
Yeah, before I get correctly called out by former coworkers, this was me. Very much a participant as a middle manager, God help me, in a system that was pointless. It was a waste of everybody's time. It was a waste of our literal lives. Acknowledging it, not doing anything about it. Oof. How about you?
He must still perform his mundane bureaucratic tasks day in and day out, lest he be without a job and fall into homelessness. He's trapped. His actions can never really match his beliefs. Capitalism has become such an amorphous, complicated mess that we don't really know what to do with our anger. Our capitalism is a Kafkaesque nightmare. We live to earn money, and we have to spend that money to live. Even expressing hatred of a capitalist system requires participation in that system. This video, for example, was not free to make, and indeed, like the aforementioned manager, I generate some measly amount of income from it. We are forced to hold on to radically opposed identities throughout our lives, days, and even hours. We can scream into the world, but there can be no hope because the world is an abyss. There's nothing to scream at. No one knows who's to blame, and no one knows who can even do anything. Our bureaucratic mess of capitalism means the concepts of right, wrong, cause, and effect blend into some nonsensical ether. Every minute of every hour, we are blinded, suffocated, and motivated by capitalism all at once. At the end of it all, we are filled with a rage that has no direction, so we just let our anger flicker and die. Our feelings and frustrations remain blunted by the necessities of everyday life. For those lucky few who win at capitalism, they enter the abhorrent bunker of the corporation. This bunker protects them from those on the outside dying to get in. Inside this bunker, there is much work to be done, processes to oversee, protocols to follow. Whether or not they want to hear the discourse outside of their walls, they will not. They cannot. They are blind.
I just caught the avocado toast comment. Look, I don't know if I consider it a fancy food. I just consider it a waste of a good piece of toast. What's the matter with you with your avocados? That's not a Look, your old pal Jake is not always a class act. I like a good old-fashioned jam or a marmalade on there. An orange marmalade, huh? How about that? Slather that thing in butter, hit it with the orange marmalade, get a black coffee, my God, you got yourself an afternoon.
To the world outside of their bunker. And so the victors rot. They rot comfortably inside of their steel bunker.
Anybody else? There's a black. Let's keep the black screen up for now. Imagine your eyes are closed. Who are you imagining when you think of a victor of capitalism rotting all alone? Is it Elon Musk? That's who I'm thinking of.
As the problems of capitalism continue to rear their heads, those in power do not acknowledge that these problems are intrinsically linked to capitalism as a system. You will hear politicians blame every issue in the world for climate change, besides the system on which it is built. Instead, they say we just need to throw more capitalism at these problems.
Oh, perfect.
They say private enterprise should be trusted to end world hunger and fix our environment. Part of our profit will go to saving the planet. All you need to do is buy more stuff. And so, the loop is complete. You might be familiar with the idea of late-stage capitalism. A lot of what I just described might ring that bell. Today, late-stage capitalism is a pretty abstract concept. People attribute all kinds of different issues specifically to, quote, late-stage capitalism. Today, it's pretty much used as slang, but late-stage capitalism has a strict definition. This cold, crushing feeling has its roots in academia. Werner Sombart was a German economist in the late 1800s and early 1900s. Sombart was not a big fan of capitalism, but he was a huge fan of Karl Marx. Sombart wrote the book Der moderne Kapitalismus, which contained the first instance of the phrase late capitalism.
That seems important. I can't think about anything else, though. Pinkerbell, you made some blackberry jam? To quote a wise man on the internet, give me peace. Delicious.
In this book, Sombart divided capitalism into 3 eras: proto-capitalism, advanced capitalism, and late capitalism. Sombart said that capitalism survived on a cycle of boom and bust. He said that the system had to create wealth and then devour that wealth so as to make room for more. This was called creative destruction.
That's rage.
Sombart believed it was not sustainable. Eventually, he said it would lead to, quote, late capitalism. Broadly speaking, late-stage capitalism refers to a point at which the system serves only a few wealthy people at the reckless expense of the majority. At this point, the rich siphon money from the middle class, eliminating it until our society is only the elites and the impoverished. After late capitalism, the exploited would eventually rise up, destroy everything, start a new system. So, you may be wondering, when does that start?
Oh, that commercial.
I would love to make this video and say capitalism is on its way out. It's dying. Current polls could even help me make that point. A recent Axios poll showed 54% of Gen Z have a negative view of capitalism. One 2020 survey by the marketing and PR firm Edelman showed that 57% of people worldwide believe capitalism as it exists today does more harm than good. I would love to point to these increasingly negative feelings and say this is a signal that the end is near. I could say that there are socialist politicians in Congress. The self-declared democratic socialist almost, perhaps should have been, a presidential nominee. I could run with this and say it's a signal of capitalism's imminent demise. But people have been predicting the end of capitalism for some 200 years now. And yet,
2 things. Number 1, Shade Dragon, I'm sorry, I didn't see your response. I'm going to look for it in the tail end of this video. But if you want to make it easy on me, let me know if we're doing a call-in show after this, or if you just want to talk in the comments. Thing number 2, I'm going to try to predict. I don't remember how Horses ends this video. a phrase I didn't think I would find myself saying. Wouldn't have occurred to me to wonder if I would say it. Anyway, I think it's going to be you and me. I hear people talk about like ending capitalism. And to me, I think that's like saying I want to lose weight, so I'm ending my consumption of ice cream. I just think what's going to happen. It's not going to be as dramatic as all of that. Instead of eating ice cream every day at 5 p.m. as a little treat that you give yourself every day, because you're sick of being out of breath when you walk up the stairs, I'm drawing from real life, you switch to once a week. You just change how much you rely on the ice cream. And in this case, what we need to do is change how much we rely on money as a way to decide things. It's not that we get rid of money altogether. No, that doesn't even really make sense. And I don't think that's what anybody that I have heard advocate for the end of capitalism is genuinely advocating for. What they are advocating for is that we stop making the most important decisions there are to make as a society based on money. What generates the most? What does this, that, or the other thing? It used to be a way that we measured work, and then it became the focus of our work, thus really defeating the purpose. Because if you recall the example of the potato farmer and the drywall, the whole point was so that the potato farmer didn't have to learn a new skill just to get drywall put up in their home. A thing that they would need done maybe once ever. Similarly, they shouldn't have to have a detailed understanding of the stock market in order to have a retirement. They should just have their needs provided for them in their retirement, because we assume that their very presence here on Earth was of use to us. And we look at the results and we say, yes, there is enough left over for this potato farmer to not have to worry about things.
We carry on. The capitalist system seems to only consume and grow larger just for the sake of unending growth itself. Still, I am hopeful. I don't know when capitalism will fall, but I can say with the utmost certainty that capitalism will fall. This is a when, not an if. All economic systems die. Capitalism is no exception, and there's no reason it would be. We were hunter-gatherers, and then we were farmers. Then we had a slave economy, and after that, feudalism. Now we exist in capitalism. Those that are benefited most by capitalism will desperately cling on to it just like it currently clings on to us. But eventually...
Such a good way to put it. Gulf Coast grit, so it dies with a whimper instead of a bang. That's the thing. I think it goes back into its cage with a whimper. And we don't keep harassing it. We say, you know what you did, and what you did was wrong. As my old vice principal would have said. And did say many, many times. It doesn't die. That's my point. It ceases controlling our lives. It's got its use. It's a good way to regulate what we do with excess. The problem is that it's a bad way for us to regulate what should not be decided based on who gets luxury. And we certainly shouldn't defer to it as a default. As a default, we should defer to the idea of basically what would you be willing to watch? What would you be willing to watch in slow motion? Would you let a kid starve to death and you're just watching and you do nothing? No, of course not. But if you put 4 or 5 degrees of separation so that you know that our distribution of yada yada yada, then it feels like it's not on you. It feels like you didn't just do that. But the reality is we all did. And we all are right now. The childhood poverty that was brought up earlier, we all agreed to by not disagreeing. when it happened, by not doing a massive letter writing campaign. When I didn't come on here, I think there was time when the channel started, I didn't come on here and say we should do a letter writing campaign. That is on me. I'm going to be sad about that for a moment, but we're going to kick it back up. And this is going to end on a high note, I promise.
They too will fail, and society will move on to something greater. Selfishly, I do hope this change happens at a time when it is relevant to me and the world that I live in. But who knows? Whether in a year or a century, the death of capitalism will come like the death of seasons. The leaves will die and fall to the ground, where they will be crushed into nothing as society walks onward into the future. And indeed, there are a lot of theories about what will replace capitalism. Perhaps it'll be socialism or some other kind of centralized economy. Maybe we will go into a period of degrowth, where humanity collectively slows down its consumption of resources for the greater good. There could be some kind of participatory economy wherein people have true agency to decide how they interface with an economic system. Or maybe we'll just revert to some kind of agrarian permaculture economy. Ultimately, while maybe it's interesting to think about, I don't know if predicting a future after capitalism has any real value right now. There are steps that we need to take before we fantasize about a post-capitalist reality, one thing at a time. Karl Marx, of all people, warned against developing recipes for the kitchens of the future. Throughout history, mankind has fixed flawed systems. Serfs killed their lords. Royal families have been brought to their knees and shot in their basements. These past conquests can signal a new, brighter future for humanity. There's opportunity to be had, and capitalism can be defeated even when we feel trapped by darkness. Just need to turn on the light.
Again, that was Horses, and they do video essays that are just every single time knocking it out of the park, but with significantly more athleticism. We're going to do the call-in show, folks. I'm delighted. I've been looking forward to this conversation. Let's read some chats. Shade Dragon, Fallout New Vegas. I don't know what you're talking about, but I am interested. Yes, indeed. That is a fantastic video game. The Emo Dragon, how dare he ignore me? Did you do the what you got? If you tag me, it's much easier for me to see in the stream. Let me look up. I'm going to look for the Emo Dragon. The Emo Dragon. See, there's you talking to other folks. I don't know what it is. Oh, no, buffering. Yeah, there's this thing. We have a very unreliable connection tonight, but oh well. Final thoughts. I just wanted to say, predicting how it's going to get replaced is less important than predicting what needs to get replaced. A great start, whatever you want to call the system, in fact, I'm sure historians will rename whatever it is we come up with. But a great start is to identify those things which we all agree that all of us need, and to agree that we are going to provide for that need. Plain and simple. Housing, okay. We will assume that anything other than, as they described it, those Soviet-style blocks, that's luxury housing. And you can go get it. That's our hope, is that people will go out and do that. But the answer for somebody not being able to do that can never again be, you're camping tonight. Oh, there's one homeless shelter within 10 miles of here, but you have to be there by 9 p.m. Otherwise, in this blizzard, because it's 9:15, you have to just endure. Try not to freeze to death. That is not the society we need. Are we going to let somebody starve to death? Are we going to let somebody have a medical issue that goes untreated? No. Let's start by civilizing ourselves. How about that? And when we are done with that, and if you want to know how we pay for it, we grab the worst offenders and we take their money. It's that simple. If it needs paying for in a capitalist system, yeah, we take the people who are able to afford spaceships, and we make them instead pay for the houses, the medical expense, and so on and so forth. If we want it to not cost a lot of money, if we need to be able to do this stuff efficiently, then what we do is we make the government do the work, literally. And incidentally, that also becomes jobs. Then the government is building apartments, and they are hiring, just like we hired people to build the highways, they are hiring many, many Americans to build those apartments at fair wages, and so on and so forth. In that way, all the money stays with us, and it is simply moving around. It's changing hands. Ironically, functioning the way capitalism functions best. On our way to getting healthier, we will feel healthier every day. It is the fact that we have been ignoring these responsibilities for so long that makes them seem so daunting, but they shouldn't be. Before we do the call-in show, I'm going to leave you with one clip. Just one clip. It was a last-minute suggestion, but son of a gun. I can't not talk about this. Here's the rule of thumb. This is why I think I'm going to work on somebody's campaign this year. Like, I'm going to volunteer to work for somebody, but I myself am probably not going to be running for office. Because if somebody behaves the way your old pal Jake probably would, they have no right to hold office. If somebody, for example, gets kicked out of a place in a manner you could imagine this mug getting kicked out of a place, they shouldn't dare lead anybody. Anyway, here's Lauren Boebert.
Ushers at Denver's Buell Theater had to escort Republican Congresswoman Lauren Boebert out of a performance of Beetlejuice this weekend after getting complaints about vaping, taking pictures, and causing a disturbance. We just got a hold of the video from inside the theater Sunday night. An incident report detailed it, and city sources confirmed to 9 News that Boebert and the person she was with were the subject of complaints. Audience members said the two were vaping and singing, and when asked to leave, got argumentative. Boebert appeared to take a selfie as she was escorted out. Boebert's congressional office did not reply to multiple emails about what happened, though the Congresswoman alluded to what happened on Twitter, saying she pled guilty to laughing and singing too loud.